Welcome to day 2 of Your Divine Purpose Devotional. If you just happen to be joining me, I'm working through a book that I just recently published. I read it with 42 chapters. That's nice and neatly 6 weeks. And just opening up each of these chapters and sharing with you some thoughts. My goal is bite size because this devotional is for you. People who are out there, not paid to go to church, as I always like to put it, but doctors, teachers, bus drivers, caterers, restaurateurs, baristas, stay-at-home mums, truck drivers, whoever you are, whatever you do. I wrote this for you because my passion and my hope is that you will discover that you are apostolic and that you're sent. And this is what I've called an apostolic field guide for every believer, because I want every believer to know they're apostolic. So here we are at day 2, and I've called this the fivefold in you. I think it's really easy for us to leave the fivefold in a way to the church leaders, to think it's just a part of church government and something that people in leadership in the church discuss. And I want to tell you that I don't believe that it is. I believe that it's for all of us, especially because the purpose of each of the 5, the apostle, the prophet, the evangelist, the pastor, the teacher, is to equip the saints for the work of ministry. And so it is for all of us. I do think there are times, to be honest, and you find, of course, the fivefold in Ephesians 4:11. That's the verse for today. He gave some as apostles, some as prophets, some as evangelists, and some as pastors and teachers. And that's there in Ephesians chapter 4 and verse 11. And I think sometimes we can forget that it's but one verse in an absolutely incredible chapter. And so I'm going to unpack that a little bit. I also just want to say that I think it's a mistake to make huge assumptions about the entire structure of a church just from one verse. It's a little bit like something I often quote, and that's Bill Johnson's. He loves to say, it's foolish to worship angels, but it's equally foolish to ignore them. Well, it's foolish to put all our ecclesiology on one verse, but it's equally foolish to ignore the verse. But let me give you the context of this, Ephesians chapter 4, and it's in where I've written it, but let me just run through it because the context is profound. The context of Ephesians chapter 4 is unity, the unity of the Spirit, and statements of the singleness of the body, the Spirit, hope, the Lord, faith, and baptism. And that's the context. We then have verses 7 to 11, which are about the gifts of Christ, and then verse 12, the equipping of the saints for the work of ministry, and that's you. And then verse 13, the resulting unity of faith, knowledge of the Son of God, and maturity of believers. This is what this is for. And then verse 14, the outcome. We are no longer tossed around, tricked, or deceived, and then growing up to be like Jesus. This is what the fivefold does for us, is meant to do for us. And then verse 16, one of my favorite verses, the whole body working efficiently and in the excellence of love. That's the context. And the fivefold's one verse in the middle of that. And that isn't to mention the remaining 16 verses of Ephesians chapter 4. And I'm not even going to begin to go there. You know why we need the fivefold? Well, we need the fivefold because of these outcomes. That's why. The fivefold verse isn't there just as this single verse to tell us how to build the church, run the church, and the title of people who work in the church. No, we need the outcomes. And the outcomes there, really, they're laid out for us very, very clearly, I would suggest. And we need the outcomes, a fivefold approach, which, people talk about, do you believe in the fivefold? Well, yeah, but it's not, I don't put all my emphasis on it, but a fivefold approach that does not expect to see unity, maturity, Christ-likeness, a lack of deceived believers, and a body built up in love is missing the mark. The purpose of the fivefold is to equip the saints, and in whatever capacity you lead, the challenge is the same for all of us. How are we being equipped, and what fruit are we expecting to see? You see, the fivefold is in the middle of a chapter on unity. What a tragedy, therefore, that at times the fivefold is used to divide, and we end up using language that divides us. And that's the challenge. You see, the fivefold should unite us. And, we should be able to express, and isn't it a tragedy that, we have spent 2,000 years dividing the church. And it's a great tragedy. My friend Jean-Luc Traxel and myself and one or two others are involved in a strategy called Europe Shall Be Saved. Jump on the Instagram or social media and join us in believing for that while I mention it. But one of the things that we've very clearly said is it's about unity. Europe won't be saved. We won't see a major revival and reformation across Europe without a united bride all working together and honoring each other, not pointing at our differences, but honoring our relationship with Jesus. And then the verses, the gifts of Christ, they are for the equipping of the saints. What does that mean? Well, it's relatively simple. The prophet's lens brings tomorrow into today and values the unseen world. The evangelist lens is about the good news of Jesus and the needs of mankind. Teachers carry this lens of the word and the spirit, and pastors approach life through the lens of caring for each other. Now, it's very, very simplistic, and the apostles' lens is that of being sent to bring change. So those verses there about the fivefold are then for equipping the saints for the work of ministry, whoever you are, whatever you do, wherever you go. Because remember, ministry is your work. In fact, the people of Israel, work was their worship. There's something that we need to learn there. So we're being equipped for the work of service and for ministry. And then the result of that should be the unity of faith, believing together, a knowledge of the Son of God, and the maturity of all believers. What an incredible picture. And that becomes the focus. That becomes the focus of this fivefold chapter. And the outcome is we shouldn't be tossed around. We should be stable, not tricked nor deceived. How we need that today. And then the goal is that we're all growing up to be like Jesus, the head. And then verse 16, this incredible verse of every part, every joint connected together, working together, serving each other. And so that we have the building up of the whole body working in efficiently and with excellence. Where are you in the fivefold? What do you think? The verse for today, Ephesians 4:11, he gave apostles, prophets, pastors, evangelists, and teachers for the equipping of the saints. That's the verse for today. Let me just give you the review question for today. What's your view of the fivefold been? Think of a time when you've sat under or learned from somebody who held, as it were, the fivefold title, whichever one of those it is. And what was the fruit of that time? What was the fruit of really sitting under a true fivefold pastor, evangelist, prophet, teacher, or apostle? What was the fruit in your life? And then what can you declare about the fivefold that will help shift your perspective today? And then finally, reflect on how God has used the fivefold to shape your walk with him and equip you for what you are doing today. And therefore, what can you find time to be thankful for? So review your experience of the fivefold, declare something about the fivefold over yourself today, and reflect and be thankful for how God has used any of those five, and of course other leaders, because that's always a part of discussion. Are there only five? But review, declare, reflect. And Father, I pray today that everyone who is watching this will walk into their place of work, whoever they are, whatever they do, wherever they go. They'll have that sense of, I have a divine purpose to bring heaven to earth. And maybe it'll look like teaching. Maybe it will look like pastoring. Maybe it will look like prophesying. Maybe it will look like the good news. Or maybe it will have that strong sense of, hey, I've been sent to bring heaven's culture, to bring change where I am. So Father, bless everyone watching this, I pray, in your name. Amen.